Hi, friends. So today I wanted to talk about when the devil tries to tempt us. So I wanted to look at mainly Matthew 4, verses 1 through 11. And this was when Jesus was in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. He didn't have any water or anything to eat. And the devil tried to tempt him. In our lives, we're always going to be tempted through everything in life. I mean, you always have like these negative thoughts, or if anything that happens, you're always going to think, well, that's not possible. We end up self-sabotaging, right? So I wanted to go over the verse a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the devil tried to tempt Jesus 3 times, right? So he was in the desert. And the first time he tried to tempt him, he said, if you look at Matthew 4, verses 11, which is what we'll be going over today. So this is like when he was tempted. And I'll go over it. So the first time he tried to tempt him is when he said, when the devil came up to him and said, if you are the Son of God, why don't you turn this stone into bread? Right? He's trying to say, if you're claiming to be the Son of God, why don't you just turn this stone into bread? And Jesus' reply was, a man, which is a spirit, cannot just live off bread alone. You also need the word of God. If you just have bread, you can't just survive on bread. You also need the word of God. So that's the first time he tried to tempt him. The second time he tried to tempt him is he took him to like a cliff that oversees the temple. And he said, if you are saying that you're the Son of God, why don't you jump off the cliff and God will send his angels to come down and save you. He'll save you. Just jump off. And Jesus said, you are not supposed to test God. Don't test him. Don't say, I know if you love me, you'll catch me. No, that's not how it works. You don't test him. You trust God and his plans for you in the process. You don't test him, right? You don't say, God, if you want this if you let this happen, then that means you love me. You don't test his love for you. You just don't do that. And that's true. So the first time he asked him to turn it into stone, he asked him to turn the stone into bread. The second time he asked him to, the second time he asked him to jump off the cliff and that his angels will save him. No, you don't test God, and you don't need just bread to live off. To be able to live off. You also need the word of God, right? The third time he tried to tempt him is when he said, if you worship me, I will give you the entire kingdom. I will give you anything you want, anything that you desire, whatever you can think of, I will give it to you. All you have to do is bow down to me and worship me. That's what the devil said to Jesus. And Jesus said, there's only one God that I'm worshiping and I'm serving. One God and one God only, right? So basically my whole point is, in life, you're going to have times where you feel like you're tempted and you're going to have these negative thoughts that make you self-sabotage. You have to learn the same way Jesus talked to the devil, he talked back to him and corrected him. You have to do that in your life too. Say, for example, I'm in a job interview. The negative thoughts or the devil might say, oh, you're not really qualified. It didn't go well. They don't really like you. You talk back to it the same way Jesus talked to the devil when he was in the desert and corrected him. No, if they don't like me, that's okay. I mean, that would be their loss. That's fine. I am qualified. I have these requirements. I felt like it would be a great match for me. You have to talk back to it. And the same way when you're you just don't want to self-sabotage, The same way, say you're in a relationship and say your previous relationship wasn't that great and someone did something they weren't supposed to, and then you roll over that trauma or that past hurt to your new relationship. That's not fair, because you have to remind yourself when you have those thoughts like, oh, I'm seeing red flags, or what is, because this person did this, does this person mean that they're going to do it too, the new person? No, you can't roll over red flags. Of course, it brings experience, it brings wisdom, of course, yes, but you can't roll over past hurt to a new person. You have to heal and then go based off what the new person does. Like because they're their own person. You have to remind yourself they're two different people. It's a whole different life, and you trust again, and then just move on with your life. So we don't want to self-sabotage. And when we're having those negative thoughts, and the devil's telling us negative things, and it's saying like this might be true, or making us doubt ourselves or the situation or a relationship, we have to be able to talk back to the devil. That's my whole point. So if the devil says, oh, your partner's doing this, just gives you some kind of doubt, you have to tell yourself, no, my partner loves me, makes me priority. He or she has done everything that I ask. Look at the actions. I don't believe that's true. If you have evidence, then you can go from there. Okay. Same thing when it comes to like a job. If you're not confident in a role, then not confident in a role, but if you're doubting yourself, whether you got the role or anything like that, talk more positively about yourself, right? So I interviewed one employee. I have one candidate that I interviewed last week, actually. And the position was for like an entry-level job. And I looked at his resume. His resume was, he was like overqualified. He was a PhD student. He had his master's degree already. I think his undergrad was at OSU, but he already had his master's. He's working on his PhD, and he's applying for entry-level role. See, for someone like me that works in HR, that's kind of like, why is he working an entry-level job? Because he should at least be a supervisor management, because he's overqualified, right? So because you paid a lot to go to school, you have student loans, you're overqualified, you should be applying to bigger roles. That's my whole point, right? So when he came in to interview, and I met with him, he was very timid, he was very quiet, he was very shy. He looked so nervous. And I was like, oh my goodness, I felt so bad. I felt bad asking him questions about during the interview process, because he was so shy and so nervous. I was like, that's why. The confidence. That's why. You see how our devil tries to play tricks on our mind? He was great on paper, but he didn't have the confidence. Oh my goodness. It was just kind of like, wow. The whole point is, you see how the devil plays with our mind? How it can make you think, oh, I'm not confident, I can't speak up, I can't do this. Now, I always tell people all the time, there's no such thing as a silly answer, or there's no such thing as a silly question. If I ask a question, like when I work with my team, they're always like, oh, I'm surprised you asked that. I would probably think it was silly. That's fine. That's you. That's okay. That's you. You're allowed to think that. And I always tell them, I don't think there's anything such thing as a silly question, because I'm asking because I don't know, So you don't have to prove your worth to anybody. Like when the devil tempted Jesus to, he said, if you're the Son of God, turn this stone into bread. I don't have to prove my self-worth to you. I don't have to show anything to anybody, and unless you want to, but you don't have to do that. You know your self-worth. You don't have to prove yourself to anybody, So that's the whole point. I don't want us to self-sabotage, and I want us to be able to talk back to the devil when we're having negative thoughts, and actually look at facts and be logical, Don't go based off your emotions, because your emotions is just... it's good one day, bad one day. So I just thought this was a great verse today. So that was Matthew 4, verses 1 through 11. Let me know what you guys think. So the devil tried to tempt Jesus 3 ways. He asked him to turn the stone into bread. He said, if you are the Son of God, you should jump off the cliff. And God will have his angel save you. Which you should not be testing God with the one with the bread. Turn the stone into bread. I don't have to show my worth or prove myself to anybody. You don't have to do that. And the third one is when he said, you can have everything in the world. All you have to do is worship me. And Jesus' reply was, I'm only serving one God. And that's the only God that I love and I'm serving. I only have one God. So my whole point is, let's try not to self-sabotage. And when we have negative thoughts and the devil's making us doubt ourselves, make sure we talk back to the devil. Let's talk back. No, be like, no, that's not true. That's not true, because we're going to have negative thoughts all the time. And one way to control the negative thoughts, which I know I talk about it all the time, but it really is meditation, because it calms your mind down. And there's research about it. So yeah, so just make sure that we're talking back to the devil, because Jesus talked back to the devil. He talked back to him. He's like, no, 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 you're not going to try to brainwash me. You're not going to try to, basically, he's like, you're not going to try to manipulate me. That's not true. That's not true. So you learn to talk back to the devil when you're having negative thoughts. And let's not self-sabotage because we're having those negative thoughts and we're acting on those. Okay, you got to be logical. All right. Okay. All right. Bye, guys.